Welcome to Spoonful of Strength, a podcast for people with chronic illness and the ones who love them, where we talk all things chronic. Here's your host, Rachel and Tina.
Welcome to Spoonful of Strength. Today, on this episode, we're going to be talking to Callie, all the way from Puerto Rico. This is a tough one, right, Rachel? It's mental illness, which is also a chronic illness for many people.
Yeah. Yep. And it's a sensitive topic too, as far as, we've kind of danced around it a little bit, but it's a hard subject to talk about because it's a sensitive topic and we want to give it the attention that it deserves because mental illness is of course a chronic illness. But Callie has offered to share her story and bring some awareness to mental illness and the challenges that come with that. So
yeah, I give her a very big kudos for being outspoken to that, because even now I still feel like even in this day and age where there's more acceptance, mental illness still has a bit of a stigma to it compared to other disabilities.
In talking about it, I guess just making sure that we're being sensitive because it is a sensitive topic, but it is an important topic to talk about. I mean, even with other issues going on, other illnesses, mental illness can weave its way in to a lot of other illnesses. In this situation, this is the main illness. And so we want to make sure that we are sensitive and let her have her moment to describe her story with mental illness and bring awareness to it.
Yeah, we really appreciate Callie joining us and sharing her journey with dealing with mental illness. Like we said, that could be difficult for other people.
Well, welcome, Callie, to our podcast here. We're really excited to have you on today. We've talked in bits and pieces about the mental part of chronic illness, but we've not yet had an episode where that's our main focus. And so we really appreciate you reaching out and wanting to share your story and everything. So we'll start here by just having you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from and anything else you would want to share about that.
Yeah, well, I'm Callie. I'm so happy to be here. I'm from Puerto Rico. I was born and raised here. I did live in the States for a little while, but I came back home and I'm still here. I had been in the holistic health industry, I would say probably for about 5 years before my disability started. My mental health disability began with a phone call at work. I was a call center representative for a company that handled HR affairs and benefits for hundreds of companies around the world. I had a particular client assigned, and although my employer did kind of have a considerate policy in regards to disrespect and rude treatment to employees, they did tell us that as a company, they were okay. They did not give us permission, but they were okay if we understood that we had to end the call. They were fine if things were too escalated. However, the particular client that I was assigned to did not have the same belief. They believed you had to stay on the line no matter what. You had to take care of that person in one call and one call only. So anyone who didn't align to that was running the risk of losing their job. Because if the client says anything and complains about it, my employer would have likely let me go, even though their personal belief was, it's okay, you are not meeting our client's needs, so you're not adhering to the policies in that sense. On that particular call, I spent what I recall to be roughly 45 minutes straight with a person screaming from the top of their lungs, cursing at me, and literally like, I don't think I've ever been yelled at so loudly in my life before. And I would argue that to any customer service representative on any call center, that would have been sufficient to have trouble managing themselves for the rest of the day. But in my particular case, I have a background of prolonged domestic violence. That one call in a matter of that period of time brought a lot of flashbacks forward. And all of a sudden, I felt as trapped in that call as I felt in that relationship that lasted 8 years. Mm-hmm. It was just, I have no words to explain it. And I also have difficulties remembering, because it's also part of my diagnosis side effects. It's just the trauma is so extensive and profound that I have blank spaces in my brain. I've forgotten beautiful memories. I used to be a person that remembered everything. Like I could recite 20 movies from beginning to end and songs and just so many things. And I've catch myself often, friends asking me, do you remember this movie? Do you remember this scene on this series? And I'm like, unfortunately, I don't remember it. And it's something that's technically a good memory. I don't have access to it. And the same happens with bad memories. The brain doesn't discriminate what it's going to erase. What I've been told about that particular thing is that when your brain is been through either so much trauma, which I have, or when your brain has been sustained to prolonged periods of trauma, which I also have, it will go into a survival mode. And survival mode to the brain means one thing, and to the body means another. Mm-hmm. To the body, survival would be if somebody's going to assault you, you're likely going to either attack the person to try to defend yourself, run, freeze. People have heard about the common reactions. When the brain is in survival mode, it will kind of look like a factory that, let's say a nuclear facility that has a leak somewhere, and it's just shutting things down to try to avoid an explosion, and everything that it deems not necessary for you to make it now, it's just going to go and shut down. Mm-hmm. So that includes recollection of things, memories. That includes having problems with speech, which I still have. It includes not really giving you a whole lot of access to logic and reasoning. You go more in an emotional state, and you are honestly that much more irrational. Even if you are the smartest person, the wisest person out there, you will lose the ability to employ that knowledge and those tools. I had gone to therapy in the past. It's not like I had completely shunned it away. My trust was violated the first time around. I was a teenager. I was about 12 years old when I went to a psychologist to do all these tests to prove my IQ levels and creativity levels and all that stuff. I saw more things in the cards than the actual test had ever named on a paper. So they were like, yeah, she doesn't have problem with creativity at all. Like, that's her problem. You cannot hang her by that. So that's when they focus on the school part. Like, well, she's failing, keeping up with needs in the regular classes. So it was a little bit of a persecution there for a little while. You would think that would have been my problem at that time psychologically, just, that hit to your self-esteem of being called dumb and just like you are not a worthy human. Mm-hmm. kind of thing. I had deep self-esteem problems, a lot of self-worth problems. Most of it stemmed from coming from a broken home and not being raised by my mother. Because although my mother had a PhD, that cost her something. That meant she had to put her time and effort into work and school, which meant she had no time for us. So, all that upbringing did a number on me, which was part of what I was not aware that has really come out now in the later years. It's like, oh my God, I'm one hell of a winded child. Had knowledge of other childhood trauma, which is unfortunately from very early on, I suffered a series of events of sexual abuse as early as 4 years old. So that had already formed my view of the world in regards to safety. I had no primary parents providing safety in the household because I didn't have a father and my mom couldn't be present to be able to provide for us. So I had no immediate sense of safety. And then on top of that, at that early age, I had suffered this event of abuse that only cemented that notion of the world is not a safe place to be in. It didn't stop at that age. It proceeded through my early child stages. And later in my late teens, I also suffer an episode of rape. And that was also very traumatic for me, needless to say. By the time I reached the relationship of DB, I was already, set for failure in the sense of, as an intellectual human being, certain things are not right.
Right.
But your psyche has normalized them in the sense of you never knew safety in the past. You don't know what safety looks like. You don't know what being protected looks like. You don't know what someone standing up for you looks like. So when other things occur, you know what it feels like not to have that. So when you run into a partner that doesn't respect your feelings and your body and your thoughts, intellectually, you're like, this doesn't feel right. Yet your brain is like, yeah, this is just another day in the life of me.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why a lot of people that are in this type of relationships fall prey to these relationships. And also, in a way, why it becomes so hard to get out of. Because the human being in you knows what it wants. And it's clear on what doesn't feel right. But there's a bigger influence in your brain telling you this is just another day.
When you grow up with self-esteem issues and having that trauma, then it's like, well, I don't have enough love for myself that he's showing me attention, even though it's not positive attention. Like, that's a hard cycle to break.
So now you mentioned a holistic background, and I like that you pointed out that holistic worked to a point, but you eventually went to seek out traditional as well. So I do like that you had they complement
Working
each
together.
other. It's not always necessarily a one or the other. They can go hand in hand. So what type of treatments or therapies have you tried throughout this journey, and have you found what's most effective, at least at this point in your life? What's been most effective for you?
It's not a one size fits all, to be honest. I have found a lot of great and deep healing in holistic therapies. I have not found a lot of adequate support for me in the regular medicine, to be quite frank. I am still up to this day searching for a psychiatrist that's a right fit for me. It's an extremely uphill battle because I feel, at least where I am in Puerto Rico, the health system is beyond lacking. And out of the choices that you have, if feels like all of them have the same posture when it comes to healing and how they're going to treat patients. They believe in having you all dosed up all day long. And the thing is, there are certain conditions that benefit from that. And there are others that truly, that's not their route. Mine in particular, I have, my diagnosis is complex PTSD, major depressive disorder reoccurring. I suffer from anxiety disorder, panic attacks, and insomnia. I know for a fact, and this has been supported by psychologists and psychiatrists that have seen that trauma patients cannot be spiked up on medicine because your problem, your condition comes from trauma. There's only one way to deal with trauma. And it's the nasty way. It's head on. It's deal with it. It's face it. It's go in there. Get in that inner battlefield. You know, dig underground to find what's in there. Get to know yourself so damn well, in and out, that you become aware of what's controlling you in every sense of the way. So that you can either avoid triggers, acknowledge and recognize patterns so that you don't repeat them and don't keep reinforcing that trauma, or have a chance to heal them, which is the best of the three, but it's not an easy one.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard. It's hard work. It pays, but trauma healing is definitely
it pays.
Down and dirty.
Not everybody has the backbone for it. Not everybody is filled up to do that kind of work. Some minds genuinely are better off, and this is gonna sound wrong for me to say it, but some minds are better off not digging too deep into the rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
Other minds can handle it. And to anyone who has the type of mind who can handle it, the best choice is going to be to do it. That's the only way to set yourself relatively free from the shackles that are binding you from functioning in life more like yourself. In my case, the regular route has not been as successful. Going back to what I was saying earlier, partly the reason was because when I went to that psychologist when I was a teen, on one of the first few appointments, I had mentioned to her that dancing was kind of like my outlet, where I would let my anger out if I was depressed, and everything would stay on the dance floor or on the class dance room. And I would come home more balanced and neutral to be able to face my day-to-day life. I shared this very private and intimate piece of me with her because I'm a naturally honest person. But a couple of appointments later, my mom had grounded me, not letting me go to dance classes. I have always speak my mind.
Mm.
And I told my mom, I was like, if you're mad at me for misbehaving, the worst thing you can do is take this away from me. Because this is where I regulate myself. If you take this out, what am I going to use to regulate myself? And that burned the bridges for me with psychologists for a very, very long time.
Mm-hmm.
That I quite frankly started lying to the psychologist, telling her what at that time I felt she needed to hear to release me from treatment, because I just didn't want to deal with her anymore. And what nobody knew is that at that very precise moment my mom took me to the psychologist, I was having serious issues with ideation, and I was hurting myself.
Mm-hmm.
I was in desperate need of help. But the bridges have been burned. So I was not going to go deeper into all these things that I was suffering with in my inner world when something so basic was already violated. I was like, yeah, you're not the person I can open up with. You're just simply not. You proved it. So that kept me from going to psychologists for a very long time. I did give it another try. Again, I went genuine. Um, I've always felt like I'm not received the correct way, perhaps because of the way I speak, perhaps of how secure I am of myself, perhaps because I have knowledge on the matter and I use their lingo. I don't know what the reason is, but I've always had difficulties getting across with them.
Did you know Spoonful of Strength is not just a podcast? We have an Instagram page called Spoonful of Strength where you can see clips of our upcoming episodes, learn about different illnesses, and we share other people's stories. We also have an Etsy shop where you can shop for clothing such as t-shirts and sweatshirts and hoodies. You can find candles and mugs and tumblers and blankets. You can find it all. We support all chronic illnesses, and the great thing is, if you find a t-shirt in our shop for multiple sclerosis, we can change that for lupus or Ehlers-Danlos or any other illness that you need. Everything is customizable in our shop. Use the code podcast for 20% off your entire order.
So psychological help did not help me until recently, until disability. Luckily, in the most desperate moment of my entire existence, like a little angel, life placed this psychologist at my feet through an EAP program. I didn't even search her. I didn't even know her. I just called desperately the employee assistance program that day that I received that call. And I was like, I walked out. After I received that call, I hung up, I clocked out, I left. I didn't tell nobody. I was just like, I'm done. Bye. I don't even recall getting home. I blacked out. And I lived about 30 minutes away from my job at the time. I don't know how I made it home. I don't remember the way. But when I recovered my senses later that night, I called the EAP program and they contacted me with this psychologist. So I went ahead and started seeing her. And I may get emotional, but she was definitely a godsend. I've never met another human in the mental health care system that even if they don't agree with you, even if they don't share your beliefs with you, they hold space for you. They listen to you to understand you, not to judge you, not to label you, not to, none of that. It's just being such a welcoming experience. And I just couldn't be any more grateful because any level of recovery that I've attained up to this day, it's entirely due to the work she's doing. It has not been
Amazing.
because of the pharmaceutical work. It's been because how she's navigated both my ups as well as my downs with gentleness, with compassion, with understanding. She's had to flip-flop techniques in the care because I wasn't responding to certain things and I was responding to others. So we kind of married ourselves to these techniques that were throwing results and kind of forgot about the other ones. We poke at them every once in a while, but my care has mainly been with those techniques. One of them has been just regular psychotherapy, just me venting myself, because I became aware that one of the reasons why I've had so much problem emotionally in my life is directly linked to the lack of a support system, to the lack of friends, the lack of family, never really had a lot of that. And even when I do, I don't feel safe. So I can't really open up, which is incredible what I'm doing here, because considering that, I've come a long way from where I was. But I needed to speak with somebody and for somebody to listen and show me love and show me care and all these things that were really not, that much present in my life. And she's been that. So regular psychotherapy has been good for me. And another technique she uses, which I honestly, I swear by it, it is a psychological practice that you can acquire. I don't think they show it in medical school because it is kind of a holistic technique, but it's been recognized by the mental health field, and they are adapting it to their therapies. And that technique is called internal family systems, or IFS for short. And just to give you a gist, pretty much what that means, it has nothing to do with your family. It's pretty much your internal family is the voices in your head. Just to put it simple, the voices in your head, you know, that little devil, that little angel, that little, you know, kind of like arrogant person. All those little voices are your internal family.
Yep.
And the more you talk to them and the more you get to know them, the better you can navigate your inner world and therefore your outer world whenever anything happens.
I've done this. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have done this. Unfortunately, I probably did maybe 6 or 7 sessions, and it was really helpful. Something got in the way, to where we had to venture off of that, not because it wasn't working, but just, you know, I think I had some other health issues going on and things like that. But that was very interesting. He explained it to me is just that, you know, you have all these things in your head when you're making a decision. You have the part of you that says, I'm scared to do it, so I don't want to do it. And you have the part that says, this is going to be good for you. And you have all these other voices. It's very, very interesting. And I am so glad that you found that person, because it really is such a difference when you find the person that understands you and that you work together. And I found one as well, with my therapist, and made a world of difference. And so I'm so glad that you have that. Now, to kind of go back a little bit, but do you still dance?
Oh, interestingly enough, that's always been my passion since I was a child. Through one of those conversations of the internal family system, I found out that the reason why I don't dance is because, actually, parenthesis, as of yesterday, it's been 19 years since my mom passed away. I became an orphan at 18. And my mom was a very strict person, and she would often have harsh punishments. And as I mentioned, she would punish me with dance. And things weren't going her way or the way she thought that things had to go. And it came to light in one of those sessions that I'm kind of repeating the same thing myself. Because my mom is not alive, she cannot punish me. I'm punishing myself when I'm not functioning the way I believe I should. And I no longer enjoy dancing. Not at the time. I can't do it. Yeah, it's a toughie for me.
Yeah, but is there another passion that you found that kind of replaced that didn't have all that negative history?
Yes, everything that's got to do with holistic care, like my business. God, it brought so much joy to me. But unfortunately, because I'm a disability, I'm not allowed to work. Not that I don't want to, I can't yet. But my business brought great pleasure to me. I am a massage therapist. I'm also a Reiki healer, an access bars provider. And I just combine different things like tapping, and somatic work and stuff like that to help release trauma. So that's kind of like my passion that had nothing to do with my mother, because it actually was born as a result of her death in a way.
Mm.
I realized that my mom's death, which was due to breast cancer, in a lot of ways had to do with a lot of psychosomatic stuff that she never dealt with. So I took it upon me to obsess about the matter and learn about psychology and about how our body somatizes a lot that we go through and we don't know it. And how, with time, those things can actually manifest in other ailments. So I got very deep on that, and it turned out to be kind of like my newborn passion, because she was no longer around. So anything that had to do with her doesn't impact that. What's currently impacting that is just the lack of capacity I have to function as a human being at the moment. But to jump back a little bit onto the original question of what has worked, because I've done a lot of things. Some of the things that are holistic that I'm going to mention do also form part of the medical healthcare system. It's just that it's not as known, I guess you can say. So some of it, it's been the IFS, which some people would consider it a holistic technique, but it's been adopted by medicine. Another one has been chiropractic adjustments, but a very, very, very extremely precise technique. Out of the hundreds that exist, which I've not explored hundreds, but I've explored a few, the only one that's worked for me to process trauma stored in the nervous system is one that used to be called network spinal analysis, or NSA. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, nowadays they are calling it epigenetics. I think they're calling it epigenetics nowadays. But that technique is less invasive to your spine, in the sense of it's still a chiropractic adjustment, but they're not cracking and pulling and bending, and it's none of that is going on. They are doing very gentle manipulations to your spine with patience that allow your own nervous system to sort of recognize that something is stuck in that place, so that it makes its way. I don't know if you guys know much about this, but technically our nervous system has like a route, and whatever happens in your body from your feet has to go up to your brain to be processed. The same happens with trauma stuck in the body. If you have, for whatever reason, trauma stuck in your lumbar area, until it doesn't make its way to the brain, it's not completed the circuit. The circuit, oh my God. And so what they do is they just kind of like, poke at it, like, I see you here, and kind of make your body aware of what is there. And once your body finally goes like, oh, wait a minute, I do feel something there, then it start making its way to the brain, so that you can actually finish that processing of that information that is stuck in the nervous system. So although it sounds kind of impossible that you could, with chiropractic, deal with trauma, most of my sexual abuse trauma was healed through that. So it is a very powerful technique. But as with any type of care, you have to be open to it. If you go eccentric to it, you're not going to receive the benefit. You have to be open, willing to receive, willing to explore. And it doesn't have to work for you. That's fine. But you cannot go into treatment already with the position, this is not going to work for me.
Yeah.
Some people tend to have that mindset of, okay, I'm going to go see a professional and they're going to fix me, where really they're going to guide. Their job is to guide you to fix yourself. And that's the only way that you're that you can heal from something like that.
Yeah.
You have to do the work. Nobody can do the work for you.
Yeah, they're just a tool that helps you through the tough parts. There are always gonna be things that are gonna be too tough for you to process.
Sounds like you found that therapy to be really beneficial, which is good. You mentioned before, and I don't know this is a sensitive topic, but that you went through self-harm. And is that something that you've been able to put aside, or is that something you're still dealing with?
You know, it's extremely interesting. I love that you brought this question up because I thought it was in the past. Because in the past, for me, it had been about physical self-harm. I found out technically I still continue doing self-harm. It's just in a little more insidious ways. And I never had realized it before until now that I'm digging deeper into me and I'm having to accept that that programming is still running there.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example. At the beginning of my disability, I unfortunately spent almost a year with pretty much daily suicidal ideation. And although I can't say I had a plan, that's where I say it's very freaking insidious. Mm-hmm. Because the way that I was playing out that in my life was that on that year, I spent at the very least 6 months in this bed, never getting up to shower, never getting up to brush my teeth, never getting up to eat, not drinking water, not taking care of my pets or anything in my life. I was just literally rotten in this bed. And it was a very hard realization for me to admit that that's one way I was playing out that self-harm now, here in the present. And although that was 2 years ago, this day, I still play out the self-harm, again, in insidious ways. I still struggle eating a lot, partly because my stomach is extremely messed up. And I'm the type of person that when my stomach doesn't feel good, if I eat, it's worse. Because I'm just going to be nauseous all day, but not actually throw up. So it's just the feeling's still going to be there. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm hanging the gloves. I'm not eating until I feel that my stomach is going to allow me to consume food and actually be okay. But that's still a way that, you know, indirectly I'm playing out that self-harm thing.
There's a lot more ways than just one, you know.
Your mind gets creative. It's like, oh, you know what? We can do this way. Let's do it.
Another way could even be more of like a chronic illness like MS. You know, I have MS and I'm notorious for pushing myself far beyond what is safe, far beyond what is, you know, good for my body. And, you know, so that could also be a way of just pushing yourself beyond means.
That's probably the most way that I do it. And all this time I've been in disability, I push myself to go back to work. I can't recall how many times. It's not like it's been that many either. My psychologist has been like, you need to cut the crap. But I have tried multiple times. Every time I've tried it, it's been bad news for me because it's just triggered another huge flare up on an otherwise decent moment in my rehab. I've always been an on-the-go kind of person, just work, pay bills, take care of yourself, be independent. Sometimes I'm pushing myself.
A couple years ago, my husband wanted to give me an MS t-shirt for my birthday. All he could find, though, were brightly colored t-shirts with big graphics, like a smiley face given 2 middle fingers, and words like F U MS. Isn't there an option for a simple, stylish t-shirt that spreads awareness with kindness? That's when I created Spoonful of Strength, shirts that are inspirational, motivational, and stylish. You can find us on Etsy, Instagram, and Facebook at Spoonful of Strength. That's Spoonful with 2 L's. Enter code PODCAST for 20% off anything in the shop.
Have you experienced over the years any stigma or misconceptions about mental illness?
Whew, believe it or not, that's a tough one. I have, and curiously enough, most of it has come from the medical field itself and the companies or entities that are assigned to show up for us when we're disabled. So technically, everybody that's commingling in the field have been the first one to show lack of knowledge, lack of awareness, insensitivity. I experienced it, honestly. I'm going to throw it out there. I experienced it a lot from the Social Security Administration and their examiners.
Mm-hmm.
I am a person, you see me now, and I'm very smiley, and I seem like a normal person. And this is probably the worst I've been in about 2 years. You don't see it. It's not visible. I haven't slept in 48 hours.
Oh my gosh.
It's one thing what your personality is, and a whole different thing what your conditions are and how they affect you.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Yeah. I remember a couple of years ago, Rachel, when they put me on steroids, like low dose steroids for like months to help with a side effect that I was having with my immunotherapy treatments. And after a couple of months on it, I started realizing that I was really struggling with a lot of depression. Like, thinking I had no friends, nobody my family didn't want to be around me. My friends didn't want to be around me. I had nobody. I would just randomly cry. Now, and anybody that truly knows me knows that that's ridiculous, but that was my mental state at that time. And so I talked to my doctor that had me on there, and I said, "Hey, I think I know I'm struggling with this, and I really think that it's from the prednisone from what I was reading, because I don't know what else would cause it." And I remember the doctor telling me, "Well, I don't think that it's the prednisone, because you're sitting here, you're making eye contact with me, you're talking about your trip to, I think I was getting ready to go with my best friend to the Grand Canyon. And, I had some other stuff coming up for the summer and stuff." She's like, "You're talking about the future. You're looking forward to the future. You're making eye contact. You're smiling. I don't think you have depression."
Mm-hmm.
And I knew for a fact that that's what I was struggling. And I told her, I said, "If you don't tell me how to wean myself off of these, I'm going to stop myself cold turkey, because I can't stay on this. I can't do this."
Yeah.
So, but I had to advocate for myself to get myself off of that.
I was placed on a antidepressant that's done. For starters, I don't feel that antidepressant was doing much for my depression, but it was doing a hell of a lot of harm in regards to the side effects that I was having from the medicine. When my 3-month follow-up came around, I mentioned this to the physician. And I also mentioned them, I was like, "You know what? I know we've had a lot of focus on my depression because I have major depressive disorder and it's reoccurring, and I get that. I'm not saying abandon that. But as a patient, I feel that was ruining my life. It's the levels of anxiety that I have, because one thing triggers the other, and the other, the other. My anxiety triggers a little bit my insomnia. And when the insomnia is very triggered, the lack of sleep makes you more irritable. If you are irritable, you're likely to be more sensitive, which means my PTSD gets extremely triggered, and I'm that much more likely to turn violent, irrational, and stuff like that. So it's a serious thing to consider.
Mm-hmm.
I've been with them 7 months. I'm still not in treatment for anxiety at all. Not a little bit, not at all. I had to break with a lot of conditioning in my psyche from my upbringing to take the route to use medicinal cannabis to somehow counteract my anxiety, because my psychiatrist was doing nothing for it and nobody was doing nothing for it. And as a holistic therapist, I already tried all my tools.
Yeah.
Anxiety, and just my levels of anxiety exceeded what my tools could reach, which was I often vouch a lot for chamomile and lavender tea in combination. And I don't buy the bags. I actually buy the flower. So it's very pure and concentrated. I've never been prescribed anything for anxiety above the minimum, because I'm extremely sensitive to medicine. But I was able to wean myself off of Xanax by taking multiple chamomile lavender teas throughout the day. And I was able to keep my nervous system calm down without the side effects of Xanax, which I was just like, I was a zombie with Xanax. And that was not the only thing I did. I also used a lot of binaural beats or solfeggio type of music, which is like very instrumental, meditative type of music. It's just sounds, nobody singing, nobody talking. It's just you have different instruments playing out different frequencies and stuff like that. And that eventually puts your brain in a particular state of mind. So I would use that in combination with the tea. I also had certain fidget toys. There's a likelihood I may have some sort of neurodivergency, but it's extremely hard to tell when you have trauma playing out a big role in your life. Once trauma has been removed out of the picture, then genuine diagnosis can be done, because there's a lot of symptoms that are very alike in one or the other. But the point is, I used to have these fidget things. So I did multiple things. It was not just the tea.
Yeah.
But all these things are holistic, and it's a way where you have kind of like the power in your hands to counteract your symptoms. So I did that. I also have tried tapping, which is very good for a lot of people, even for me. But at the time, my anxiety is just off the roof, and I can bang my chest till it's red and nothing's gonna happen. And I can bang my forehead, my eye, I can bang any area, and the tapping is just not working for me at the time for anxiety. I also give myself Reiki. Never been good at that, in the sense of I always fall asleep about 15 minutes in. So it's like, I always have to go to someone to actually get like my full session, because once I fall asleep, wherever I left my hands, that's where they at. I am moving them.
Yeah.
But all these other things that I've used holistically in the past have fallen short at this moment. Another moment in my life, in another space, in another mental space, they work wonderful. And they are what allow me to make it so far without breaking. Because that's one thing I will tell you. Any psychologist, psychiatrist that I've been to, any of them, even if they don't really like me, they all agree one thing. They're like, how the hell did you make it this far without losing your shit before now?
Yeah.
We don't know. Like, you were supposed to break like 20 years ago, dude.
Oh, I can't even imagine. And it sounds like, what works for you now may not work for you 5 years from now. And it's a constant learning of, what is going to work this time and everything.
Kind of putting together a toolbox, so to speak, of okay, this is going back in the toolbox because I know that this isn't the tool I need right now, but this is the tool I can pull out and for this situation.
Perhaps things that you like in the past, you no longer like in the present, or things that work in the past won't work now. And they may work in the future again, and you may like them again in the future. But that's the thing. It's a constant self-evaluation process. It you don't put yourself, if you don't do the homework of sitting down with yourself and saying, okay, today I feel this, and that.
Mm-hmm.
What tools do I have on my toolbox that help me with this? I speak this way because I consider myself a very spiritual person. And I genuinely believe in the concept of letting go of what no longer serves.
Mm-hmm.
Might serve a year from now, and it might serve 20 years from now. But that's the thing, you have to evaluate where you are here and now and find what works in the here and now.
Right.
And, I will add this here for the benefit of the listeners. I went to a Tony Robbins event, I think it was either a year or 2 years ago, where they pretty much told us to sort of make this type of journal that's not like a journal that you write on every day, but it's kind of like a focused type of work journal where you ask yourself questions. And when you have the clarity of mind,
Mm-hmm.
you grab that journal because you're not always going to have the clarity of mind.
Right.
But when you do, you capitalize on that moment. You grab that journal and you ask yourself, what things in life make me happy? What brings me joy?
Mm-hmm.
And I sleeping 8 hours, petting my animals, taking a walk.
Yeah.
You name it, just make the list of everything that comes to mind. And then on another page, preferably next to it, so that you can compare side by side, you put the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
What makes me sad? All the things that make me sad. So that way, when you're feeling sad, you go to the journal and you're like, okay, how sad I'm feeling today? Like what sad or negative feeling I'm having today? Okay, this one. And once you zoom in it, you can go and check on which page you have sort of the antidote for it.
Yeah, I think I've seen journals online and stuff like that. I know I've went through a period where I had to do like a gratitude journal every morning of just, what I'm grateful for the day. And gosh, I think we could talk, especially Tina, with all the healing and all of that. I bet she could probably talk to you for hours, but we're going to tag your Instagram page, but I know that you do some things on YouTube as well. Can you tell us where people can follow you and where they can find you on Instagram and on YouTube as well?
Yes, on YouTube is where I share pretty much the raw of everything, both the mental health, knee injury. I also share tools and resources that I use in the past. So if I didn't finish answering that question, there's a video there that already talks about that. I do take my sweet time processing videos and stuff like that because I do prioritize me first.
Yeah.
But they can find me on YouTube on at Cali Soul Call.
Okay.
And it's the same for IG, but on IG you have the underscore. It'll be Cali_Soul Call.
Okay.
I also have a TikTok, but the TikTok it's not really used much by me. If people want to sort of see how I manage myself on the day-to-day, IG would be the place to look.
Okay.
If people want more of a summary of conditions, difficulties, resources, and all that stuff, definitely go to YouTube because that's where I put that information that's more relevant, and IG is a little bit more personal.
Yeah.
So they can find me there.
Okay. I just want to tell you, it's so brave, especially with mental illness, to share. And I think that you've given our listeners a lot of information as far as things that have worked for you. And it's just wonderful for you to, after all that you've been through, to want to help other people and find your purpose in helping other people. And I can really see that as far as, wanting to we talk with people a lot about finding your purpose, and I'm really happy that you are taking all of this and putting it together and wanting to help other people. And I definitely think that if we have anybody out there who is struggling with mental illness, to definitely follow you and find a friendship within there, because we all have our times that are a little bit darker than we expect.
I just really enjoyed having the opportunity to talk with you, and I'm a big, like Rachel kind of mentioned, of how long I could probably talk to you about, I'm a very big proponent for the self-discovery and self-healing and the different type of holistic modalities out there myself. So I think it's amazing that you're out there putting yourself out there. And honestly, it's hard, I think, for a lot to put their face out there as a face of a mental health sufferer. So it's like Rachel said, it's very brave to put yourself out there to and find your purpose of helping others.
So we just can't thank you enough for being here, and just wish you the best continued healing and everything.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
And to anyone out there that's listening that has either suffered with mental health in the past or still struggling with it or may suffer from it in the future, I do want you guys to take very, very, very extremely seriously what I'm going to say next. I cannot stress enough the importance of not giving up in the process of seeking for the resources that work for you. Yes, it is tiresome. Yes, it is frustrating. Yes, when we are in those moments, it's precisely when we don't have the energy, the will, and none of what we require to give the fight. I know.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always told myself in the darkest moments where I wanted to no longer continue existing, that I consider myself to be an extremely loving, caring, and deserving person. I think I've done my good in life. And if I tap out now, then I'm taking away the chance for life to give me what I do deserve.
Mm-hmm.
Not all the bad. I've not known all the good life can bring me yet. So I use that as sort of my inspiration to hold on. It's just, don't rob yourself of the opportunity to receive what's still out there. It's good for you. That's one. And the way to not rob yourself of what's out there for you is to be resilient in the sense of try and try and try and try and knock on the doors of the different providers that you need to knock on until you find the perfect fit for you, whatever that may be. Mm-hmm. I do not care if it's religion based, if it's race based, if it's fantasy based. I don't care. Just find what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
Try hard enough until you find the things that work, and hold on to those until they no longer work. And when they no longer work, do the exercise to find again what works for you then. But please, 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 don't make the awful mistake I made of putting everything in the same old box of you can't help me because in the past you did. Mm-hmm. Because had I not done that, had I gifted myself the opportunity to keep trying, to find the adequate resources for me. There is no doubt in my mind that this disability could have been avoided. In the past 3 years are years of life that in a way I've lost. In another way, I've not lost them because I've gained an awful lot of insight that will give me a better life now. But I've not been myself for a very long time. I've not been able to function for a very long time. I've been barely existing for a very long time. And we still don't know when this is going to be. And like I said, this could have been avoided had I not assumed, in my case, an arrogant position of, you can't help me, I know what's best for me. Or a wounded position of, but you hurt me in the past, that means all you psychologists and all you psychiatrists are the same.
Yeah.
I cannot stress that enough. And I know it's an awful lot of me to ask. But literally, it's the difference between you being here or not being here anymore. And know that it is because I've been through it. So the only way out is in, going inside. The only way through is through, not through avoidance. So surround yourself with all the things that can support you as you go through, because you will need them, be it friends, family, random people, I don't know, a club, whatever. I'm not judging. I don't have family myself. I don't have friends myself. My pets are supporting me. So I'm not saying here we don't all have the same things, but just every little bit of piece of information that you acquire along the way that serves you positively, hold on to that. Use that in your advantage and keep pushing yourself until you find what works for you. Because trust me, once you do find that, your life is actually and absolutely going to change. And you do not have to carry the burdens, the wounds, and the experiences of your past forever. There is a way to release them. So you don't have to live the rest of your life that way. A better life is out there for you. But it will cost you and you will have to fight for it. That's for sure.
I think what you said is perfect to say, of just not giving up and finding your path that's going to lead you to a better life. So there's nothing more we can say. You said it all. So thank you so much. Really. Yes. I think that you're beautiful inside and out. And I just can't thank you enough for helping us tackle the mental health illness. Callie is a very strong individual to be able to share, the darkest parts of her life. And it sounds like that she's got a good psychiatrist that's working with her. And I really appreciated, the fact of what she said at the end of just not giving up and finding the right person that's going to connect with you to turn everything around. What do you think?
Yeah, that's, and sadly, like we mentioned a couple of times, just mental illness just seems to be such a tough one to maneuver. It's one thing if MS or cancer and you're like, oh no, I'm so sorry you have that, and people support you, but it's just people tend to be uncomfortable with the thought of, hey, I have a mental illness, I struggle with a mental illness, and people don't know how to deal with or don't know how to, I guess, best support somebody going through that versus a physical disability. So it's just she's amazing. Her outlook, her passion and her drive to find what works for her, and also raise that awareness that what works for one person, not even just a matter of what one works for one person may not work for the other, but what works right at that moment may not work a few weeks from now. It's not a
Yeah.
constant one and done. This is the best way to treat it, and this is what keeps me steady type thing. It's often
Yeah.
um, a constantly moving target of having to make those changes and
Yeah. It's
adjustments.
a revolving door. And even if you get to a place where you're in a better spot, it can all change in a matter of moments. Next week, we'll actually continue talking a little bit about mental health on Tuesday, where we're talking about the mental part of getting the diagnosis and the mental part of dealing with a new diagnosis, progression and in a diagnosis and different things. And we're going to continue this discussion a little bit on mental health. That is going to come up next Tuesday. And we wish for you a pleasant weekend. And we are going to have a good weekend. I think, Tina, we're going to have a good weekend and wish that for you as well. So we'll talk to you on Tuesday and have a great weekend. Take care.